Shady Grove is an old Appalachian tune. It's been around for a while. The melody has remained mostly the same over the years, but the words could change depending on who's singing it. The melody is easy and it's short, which makes it a really good candidate for learning how to play guitar arrangements. I'm going to show you how to play my easy version of Shady Grove that you heard at the start of this video. If you want a PDF of this, check the description below to see where you can order it, or you could just pause the video as needed. Here's the intro for Shady Grove. As you can see, it's written out in both standard music notation and tab. Just follow along with whatever works best for you. In the first measure, I'm holding a D minor chord. Now I'm playing on beat 1, 4th string open. Beat 2, I strum the rest of the D minor chord. And then I keep this D minor chord down. Then I play on beat 3 the open 5th string. And then with my 4th finger on the 5th string, 3rd fret, I play beat 4. And you do this 3 times in the intro. So you do 1, 2, 3, and then the last time you hit that bass note, and then down, up, down for a strum. So all together this intro, 2, 3, and 4. That music comes back again as an interlude between verses and again at the end as an outro. So once you've learned the intro, you've already learned a pretty good chunk of the arrangement. Now before we get into verse 1, we need to learn the melody. I'm going to play it again. I'm going to call out some notes. You can either follow the tab or the music notation, but I am going to call out the note names and not the fret numbers. So at the beginning we have D, D, then E, D, C, D, D, E, G, then A for 4 beats, 2, 3, 4, C, A, G, E, C, D, E, G, E, D. Check out those chords in verse 1. When we play the arrangement of this, we're going to play the melody just as I showed you, and then we're going to strum some chords in the gaps so we keep a groove going during the long notes. Now, even though both the standard notation and tab show you what notes to play, I find it easier just to think about the chord shapes. First line of verse 1, I'm going to be playing that melody, but I'm going to be strumming a D minor chord in the gaps, so I'm going to be holding a D minor chord down throughout the whole measure. Strum, strum. Second measure, I'll play my E, D, C of the melody, but I am going to make sure I hold down the C chord because I'm going to strum the rest of the C chord at the end of the measure on beat 4. Strum a C. Measure 3, The melody's a little too busy to try to fit a chord in, so we just play the melody notes, the D, D, E, G. And then in the fourth measure of this line, we have an A note to start with, but we're going to be strumming a D minor chord for the rest of the measure. So while I hit that A, I'm going to go ahead and just finger the rest of the D minor chord as well. And that rhythm is down, up, down. So here's that first line of verse 1 slowly. Strum a D minor, form a C, and then strum. Hold down a D minor chord. And then we're off and running to the next line. The next line of verse 1, I'm going to start off forming a small F chord, our 4-string F chord, even though we're playing a single note, because we're going to be strumming an F chord in between these melody notes. Now that first note, the C, is part of the F chord, so it's covered already. So we play the C and a strum, then we play the A note, and we strum the F chord again. Next measure, we play G, E, C. Now you're going to strum a C at the end of this chord, and that E and the C are part of that C chord. So as you play those notes, just keep your fingers down. So G, E, and keep your finger down. C, keep your finger down, and I'm going to put my first finger down as well, because I'm going to strum part of a C chord on beat 4. Third measure of this line, the melody again is a little too busy to try to play a chord, so we're just going to play the melody notes themselves. And then in the fourth measure of this line, we play the melody note D, but I'm also going to hold down a D minor chord because we're going to strum in the gaps. And then that last note is really a bass note that leads to the interlude in the next line. Then you play your interlude. So here's what the second half of verse 1 sounds like. So melody note and then strum on an F chord. C chord. D minor chord. And the nice thing about this interlude that's coming up, it's the exact same music as you played for the intro. And then we move right on to verse 2. Now the melody in verse 2 is pretty much the same as in verse 1. It's just a little busier, but we are still going to be strumming in between the gaps. So just like before, there are going to be times when you're going to want to form whatever chord you see above the music. Beginning of verse 2, we play some Ds and then strum on beat 4. So ba 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 ba. We have the same rhythm in the melody in the second measure. E, D, C, and as soon as I hit that C, I'm already forming my C chord because I'm going to strum on beat 4. Measure 3, we're only going to play the melody. It's busy enough, so we don't really need a chord in there. But we have changed the rhythm. 1 and 2, 3, 4. And then the fourth measure of this line, playing A. I'm not really holding a D minor chord down here because all we need are the A and then the low D. So the A that you're holding is actually the melody note, but then starting on beat 2, you're kind of filling in the gaps with just a bass note, 4-string open. So here is verse 2, just the first half, slowly. Strum, form a C, hold this A. Now the second half of verse 2. Like before, even though you have melody notes only for a little bit, we're going to hold down that small F chord so we can strum it at the end. So we have C, 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 A, which are part of the F chord. And then we strum the F chord at the end of that measure. Just basically filling in the gaps. Second measure, just as before, as we add fingers, we can keep them down. G, E, keep the E down. C, keep the C down. And then put your first finger down as well, so you can strum the rest of a C chord. Third measure of this line, again, we are not going to play any chords here. And then at the fourth measure of this line, we play that D, the open D as the melody note, and we're gonna play some D minor chord in the gaps. And then, just like the end of verse 1, that low A, fifth string open, is just a bass note that leads us to the outro, which is the same as the intro. It's the same as the interlude. So here's the second half of verse 2 slowly. Strum, C chord, then the outro. This arrangement's pretty short, so I'm going to play it all again. I'm going to play it a little on the slow side, and I'm going to talk through it as we go. So we have our intro, holding down the D minor chord, and having your fourth finger ready for that extra bass note. 2, 3, and 4. Keep the D minor down here. Strum. Strum a C, form a D minor, form an F, strum. Strum a C, hold down a D minor chord. Interlude, 2, 3, and 4. Verse 2, D minor chord, C chord, hold this A, form an F chord, C chord, and D minor chord. Now our outro. Practice each part of Shady Grove by itself, and then gradually start putting the sections together. Practice slowly at first, and once you can play slowly, but accurately and consistently, use a metronome to gradually boost your speed, maybe 5 clicks at a time, until you can play up to tempo. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time with more guitar tips and arrangements.